Hi everyone, my name is Malavika Rajkumar. I am the content lead of Nyaya. Today I will be talking to you about how the COVID lockdown situation is actually affecting people in terms of renting. And I will be taking you through various aspects of renting and what the recent MHA order on renting is. So before we go into this, it's important to note that each state has its own renting law. For example, Delhi has Rent Control Act, Karnataka has its own law, and your renting laws change state to state. But the Ministry of Home Affairs order that was passed very recently applies to all states uniformly. It says that no landlord can ask the worker or migrant living as a tenant in his property for rent, or he can't ask them to even vacate the property. Now, this is very important because if your landlord is asking you for rent during this period, you can definitely show him this order. You can find this order on the Ministry of Home Affairs website. And apart from that, the landlord has to comply with this, because if he doesn't, it is a violation of Section 51 of the Disaster Management Act, which has a punishment of 1 year with a fine. So if you are facing trouble, you can also call the police, who will be there to help you. And now let's look at certain aspects of renting which are important for people to know during this time. First of all, what are the two kinds of agreements that are there? There's a lease agreement and then there's a leave-in license agreement. A leave-in license agreement, in a leave-in license agreement, the person giving the property is known as a licensor and the person renting is known as the licensee. And protection is not really available to these licensees because they have limited rights for a very specific period of time. And they are mostly guided by agreements. So if you violate the terms of the agreements, there's a high chance of you being evicted from that house. That is not the case for a lease agreement, because there are many protections available if you have a lease agreement, commonly known as a rent agreement. It is there in many cities like Delhi and Bangalore. So some of the rights that you have are: one, you have an interest in the property. It means once you sign that agreement, you have a right over the property. Secondly, you have exclusive possession over the property, which means it is yours to use. So like landlord interference, etc., is a main issue that keeps coming, how they keep disturbing you. But remember that once you sign the written contract, it is you have exclusive rights to that property if it's a lease agreement. And thirdly, in case of eviction, the landlord can evict you only for certain reasons, as compared to a leave-in license agreement where the scope is a little more broad. In a lease agreement, there are certain reasons under which a landlord can evict you, and it can't be anything else. And if he wants to evict you, then he has to make an application to the rent controller and actually go through an entire process to actually evict you. So some of the reasons for eviction that may possibly happen, your landlord may evict you for these reasons. One is that you have not paid rent for more than 2 months, even after he's given notice. Secondly, the house is not good for human habitation, and that is beyond anyone's control. Thirdly, there are repairs, construction to be done, and the landlord requires the tenants to leave. Fourthly, if you use the property for any other purpose. For example, let's say the landlord has leased you property for residential purposes and you run a business out of it, which would be for a commercial purpose. Landlord has a clear right to evict you. Then in case you have caused any damage to the house, then the landlord may evict you. And in case you sublet the house without his permission, then also the landlord may evict you. Now, if you actually do fall under any of these categories right now, the landlord may have the legal backing to actually evict you. But as per the MHA order, he cannot do anything till the 29th. But after that, he may have a legal claim to evict you. Then some of the other things which are very important during this time is regarding how you deposit rent and how increase in rent actually works. So when you actually deposit rent, For a lease agreement under the law, you have to deposit it by the 15th of the month. This is not specified under the law for the leave and license agreement. It is as per the contract. And the date by which you have to deposit the rent is given in the contract. And if you do rent transfers by checks or by online bank transactions, it is easier to have a written record of it. You have a right to ask for a receipt every time you pay rent, security deposit, etc., and the landlord has to give this to you. This will be very helpful in case you have disputes in the future. And when it comes to increase in the rent, the increase in the rent and the details of increase are always in your written contract. It'll usually say that after the expiry of the term of the contract, which is for 11 months, it'll increase by 10% the next year. So you should check what the percentage is in your written contract. And increase in rent can only happen after the term is over. Arbitrarily, if the landlord is asking you to increase rent right in between your lease period, then it is a problem for which you'll have to actually file a complaint. And please remember that since the MHA order on 29th has been passed, the landlord cannot collect rent from you till the 29th. This order is actually to help workers and migrants during the situation, and the landlord cannot evict you or make you vacate that property. So you may actually call up the police if you're having any trouble. To learn more on renting laws and to understand, if you have any more doubts, particularly on the situation going on right now, please go to www.nyaya.org. Please drop your questions on the Ask Nyaya tab, where you can ask us any questions on the law and we will give you information. Apart from that, you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, and we're also there on TikTok. We have very small videos there, which are really fun. And I hope to talk to you guys again soon.